Gibraltar to be excluded from Brexit transition deal, UK official fears. The centuries-old land dispute between the UK and Spain was reignited earlier this year when Eurocrats offered Madrid a veto on any deal that damaged its relationship with Gibraltar. Now a new position paper due to be published by the EU later today is expected to put the rock outside of a transition deal unless Britain brokers an agreement with Spain. However, a UK government source slammed the bloc's inconsistency on the transition period, arguing the EU had already laid out a contradictory position on Gibraltar. The insider said, if Britain's overseas territories aren't included in the transition guidelines, it would be a total contradiction in the EU's own position. The April guidelines made clear that the Article 50 negotiations applied to our overseas territories, and that transition is part of that process. They are also explicit a transition period should use current terms, structures, and the consistency and clarity must flow both ways. Earlier this week, former Chancellor and Tory Remainer Ken Clarke claimed Gibraltar will be the real hurdle of the Brexit process. The Tory MP told BBC Sunday Politics that failing to mention Ireland until very late in the first stage of the Brexit negotiation was an insult to people on both sides of the border. He said, "We suddenly faced Ireland, which nobody had mentioned, which is insulting to the people of Northern Ireland and the Republic, and we agreed then that we must keep the border open with regulatory convergence on both sides. It applies to Dover, it applies to Folkestone. And we won't get the planning permission for the lorry parks we will need if we just abandon the single market in March 2019. He added, "You've got Gibraltar coming, let's not get into Gibraltar, that will make the Irish problem look like a picnic." It comes after Spanish PM Mariano Rajoy demanded a Brexit agreement on the border between Gibraltar and Spain amid fears about the territory's future once Britain has left the EU. Speaking after EU leaders agreed sufficient progress had been made to allow Brexit talks to move on to the next phase, urged for more talks on the contentious border issue. He said, "Whatever future agreements between the EU and the UK, there has to be an agreement between Spain and the UK for that to apply to Gibraltar. We also asked that this applies to the transition period." He warned there would be no regulations in place in March 2019 unless Spain and the UK engage in bilateral talks, and warned of uncertainty for Gibraltar if nothing is agreed.